the third position? Well, it's fascism. I'm sure this will go into the history of it. I'm not sure exactly who coined this phrase, but the idea is it's not capitalism, it's not communism, it's the third position, which is kind of ridiculous because fascism uh, really doesn't have a lot to say about economics, except that it often works with collaboration between the state and business and corporates. So let's see what Keith Woods has to say about this. I know next to nothing about Keith Woods. I came across this video. I don't even remember where. Like I said, I've been meaning to do this for a week. But he's got 20,000 subs. Yeah, seems like a fascist. But we'll see. I could be wrong. Um, who? Who invented liberalism with the Sargon of Akkad there? Uh, oh yeah. BitChute, Telegram, Subscribestar. Oh yeah. So, Keith, tell us about third positionism. Take it away. I really wish these fascists would stop taking vaporwave aesthetics in music. It's really cool, but they just fucking take it.
What is third position? Third position is a political philosophy, so called because it is an alternative to the two dominant political positions of modernity, liberal capitalism and Marxian communism. There are many branches of third positionism, such as fascism, Spanish Phalangism, Catholic integralism, and Peronism. What unites all of these philosophies is staunch opposition to individualism and the materialism of both capitalism and communism, and a desire to unite people around a higher ideal. The unifying principle may differ, be it race, cultural.
So I object to his characterization of communism as an individualist, especially the what most people mean when they refer to communism, which is Soviet or Chinese communism, because those don't really play up individualists, particularly in their rhetoric. Uh, I would argue that socialism does help the individual realize their greatest life, so to speak, but um, that doesn't necessarily mean that again, particularly Soviet or Chinese communism, which are not socialism, just to be clear, don't really promote the individual. They're very much about the collective, the state, ostensibly working for the best of society and not always doing that.
Nationalism or religion, but the ideal is the same, an organic state, all parts of society working in harmony for the benefit of society, just as all parts of a body work together in harmony for the benefit of the body. In this sense, third position sees materialism, the lack of a unifying ideal, and individualism, the lack of a sense of social duty, as symptoms of decay and degeneration. A healthy body cannot have its parts pursuing individual interest at the expense of everyone else, or this will ultimately lead to the death of the body. Neither can people selfishly pursue their.
So that's a little bit of a weird uh, analogy there because the lungs work independently of the liver. They all work towards. This is where we get into sort of analogies of economy here. So if we use money as an analogy for blood, then the the body is a decent analogy for the parts of a functioning society. The lungs work independently of the liver, but they're dependent on the liver to filter out toxins so that they can get clean blood to uh, uh, properly separate oxygen from the rest of the blood. Same, the stomach works independently of the spleen, but it does. But the spleen is somewhat dependent on, I think, if I remember my biology correctly, the spleen filters out what the stomach digests. So it shows, at least in my opinion, this false analogy he's using here demonstrates uh, the way a functioning society should work, where each organ, so to speak, is dependent on each other, but functions independently from that organ if everything is working well. Uh, so I think a good society uh, embraces both individualism and collectivism. The idea that we all work well together, we all achieve greater things together, but we can't achieve our best lives unless we do so as individuals. So the fact that first of all, he thinks that communism is an individualist philosophy, and that his third positionism rejects individualism. Shows that his third positionism is more worried about making the state healthy than making the individuals of the state healthy. Because generally speaking, if the individuals in a state are healthy, then the state itself will be healthy. But if the state is healthy, that doesn't necessarily mean the individual. If the state is powerful and wealthy, that doesn't necessarily mean that the individuals are powerful and wealthy and healthy.
Individual or class interests at the expense of the social body. Therefore, third positionists are equally opposed to the parasitism of welfare given without a corresponding sense of duty to society, and the parasitism of a capitalist class that lives in luxury through exploitation of the.
Also, notice the conflation of welfare and uh, just handouts with socialism or communism. This is something I've come across multiple times on social media. This idea that socialism is just the government handing out money to people who don't have to work. No one thinks that a functioning society, at least with our current tech level, is one where no one has to work ever at all. That's absurd. That's fucking ridiculous. However, we can build a society where everyone works their fair share and so they all work less. Well, the fat cat CEOs will have to work more, but that's fine. I've heard that according to some statisticians, we could provide enough resources for every person in the world to live a sufficient, dignified life if everyone worked 15 hours a month, for 15 hours a week. So if we instituted a situation where everyone got housing, food, clothing, healthcare, and they just had to work wherever they wanted, if they like working on cars, if they like hunting, if they like doing customer service, sales would obviously not be a huge part of a socialist system, given that it would probably be part of a market socialist system, but it would be a little bit different because they would essentially just be facilitators of the deal, not the kind of salesmen we have today, where they're literally conning people into buying things they don't want in many cases. But whatever job you want to do, you can do it, and it helps the society, and that is what earns you your food and your shelter and your clothing and whatnot. And you can work more if you want to have a little bit better living or different food or other luxuries. Obviously, I mean, if you've got a few hours, I could probably lay out my idea for a market socialist system, but I'm not an economist. There are probably things I'd miss, and a lot of it would basically work off of like a credit system that I'm not super thrilled with. So, uh, there are ways of setting up an economy such that this works. There are people much smarter than I, who, or at least more educated than I on this subject, who have worked it out. But the problem is that means that the handful of billionaires and millionaires at the top wouldn't have those billions and millions of dollars, and so wouldn't have that power. Keep in mind that third position, fascism, is basically the idea that uh, the state is the final arbiter and final power in the society, and so whoever is at the top of the state will have all of the power, and you will need to appeal to them in order to improve in life.
The rest of society. In place of the class warfare of Marxism and the rampant individualism of capitalism, third position ideology desires class cooperation. If an organic society can be achieved, individuals and classes will work together in harmony. Workers will get a fair wage.
I love that he's using literal socialist propaganda here, probably from the IWW to advertise his uh, third position argument. The hand that will rule the world, one big union. The one big union is basically the tagline of the IWW, the International Workers of the World. That's exactly what this is. That's exactly what socialism is trying to do, is to point out to all the workers of the world that we are all in this together, and that the owner classes, to put it into the black and white dichotomy of paleo Marxism, the bourgeois and the proletariat, that the bourgeois are uh, they are already collaborating to keep the proletariat down, and we need to collaborate as proletarian to work together to improve our situation. So it's highly ironic that he's using this to promote fascism.
And benefits for their labour, while entrepreneurs will be rewarded for their innovation so long as they uphold their duty to respect their workers and social obligations. The state should serve as an intermediary to ensure class cooperation for the benefit of everybody. In the words of third positionist Juan Perón, once capitalist parasitism disappear, ipso facto classes will be eliminated. No more bourgeois or proletarian, but functionally and hierarchically organized producers in their companies.
So you want to. This is the problem with fascism or third positionism, as I understand it. Uh, Again, from what I understand, third position is just fascism. Uh, it's a nice term to use because fascism rightly has so many negative connotations. I'm pretty sure Perón was a fascist leader. Uh, this is incoherent. Once capitalist parasitism disappeared, capitalism is inherently parasitic. So once we eliminate capitalism, what's the economy like? What is the construction of the economy? Is it a social economy where the workers control the economy? Well, that's just socialism. Is it state capitalism where the state controls all the businesses and decides how everything functions? That's basically capitalism with extra steps. So, because what ends up happening in state capitalism is that the state assigns people to run the businesses, and they end up becoming the bourgeois owners of the businesses. This is what we see in the Soviet Union and what we saw in the Soviet Union, and even more so what we're seeing in Dengis China.
This economic philosophy, called corporatism, was inspired by syndicalism of the early 20th century, a radical anarchist philosophy that wished to organize society around the mutual cooperation of workers' syndicates, and by royalists and traditionalists, who wished to correct the excesses of individualism brought about in the Enlightenment and create an organic, harmonious society in modernity. It also took inspiration from Catholic social thought, distributism outlined in encyclicals like Rerum Novarum, in which it is written, "Each needs the other. Capital cannot do without labour, nor labour without capital."
Wrong. Well, more accurately, labor is capital. When it is true that capital cannot do without labor, but labor creates capital. So when one person controls all the capital, they also ipso facto control the labor. Except that the labor is the work of is the result of the worker's effort. So while they control the labor also controls itself if they can realize it. This is the struggle of class consciousness, this is the socialist struggle, is that capitalism has brainwashed people into thinking that uh, capitalism is that it is right that wealthy people control things when it's not right. It shouldn't even be, but it is.
Mutual agreement results in the beauty of good order, while perpetual conflict necessarily produces confusion and savage barbarity. What united all these seemingly disparate groups was the desire to transcend capitalism rather than appropriate it, as the Marxists had intended. That desire for the economy and society to be run on the basis of transcending individualism and economic reductionism is still what unites third positionists of every stripe. Third positionists oppose capitalism and communism because they are materialist doctrines. They treat man as a malleable entity abstracted from the world around him. Third positionists oppose the abstraction of man and emphasize the importance of things like race, culture, and religious belief in not just shaping man, but giving importance to his life. Third positionists oppose the tendency of capitalism to destroy these traditional sources of meaning, leaving nothing to replace it but soulless individualism and hedonism. Third positionists believe in the importance of hierarchy. Those that work hard should be rewarded. The most fit to rule should.
There it is, boys. We adore hierarchy. There's a problem. I mean, there are some hierarchies that justify themselves and are necessary, but this idea that some people are fit to rule, I disagree. I tend to agree with Douglas Adams on this, that anyone capable of getting themselves elected president should under no means be allowed to do the job.
Rule, and society should strive to produce great writers, artists, and innovators. Because third positionists believe in true hierarchy, they are totally opposed to the Marxist tendency to oppose all hierarchies as unjust, but also the false hierarchy of capitalism, in which the only hierarchy that rules is that of money, and higher culture is destroyed.
So, is anyone else noticing how incoherent this is being? Where they oppose the assumption, the Marxist assumption that uh, the of unjust hierarchies, the Marxist opposition to unjust hierarchies, I should say, but also uh, the false hierarchy of capitalism. Well, then, how does your system work? Because I can explain how a socialist system works pretty simply. Uh, Depending on whether we have a syndicate system, or it's more worker co-ops, or however the system is organized, basically businesses would. This is also capitalist realism influencing your thinking. We don't need discrete businesses if profit isn't the motive. If we don't have a profit motive, there's no reason for there to be 10 different varieties of soda that all taste more or less the same. So, in a socialist system, you would have the root beer factory as a oversimplified example. Now, if someone came up with a different, better way of making root beer, then they can get the means to make that and have it. And it would, if someone prefers root beer A over root beer B, then they can get root beer A. And if they prefer root beer B, they can get root beer B. There's the only reason to have different, discrete, separate, competing businesses is in order to preserve the profit motive. Without the profit motive, these businesses don't need to exist, and more importantly, this idea of who do you work for doesn't need to exist. If you want to work in a textile factory, whatever kind of textile factory would exist post-automation, then as long as you have the training and education, you can go to the textile factory and put in your hours there. If you want to work as a gardener or a fisher or a mechanic, as long as you have that training, you can do it. You don't need to go through an application process where they decide if you're worth hiring, if it's worth paying you for it, because you're not getting paid in the capitalist sense. So, without the profit motive of capitalism, what is the economy here? I don't expect him to answer.
Destroyed by commodification and the dominance of popular culture. Above all, the third positionist desires not just a political revolution, but a revolution of the self. Feeling disgust at the degenerate state people live in under liberal capitalism, third positionists seek the creation of a higher type of man in society. The new man is one of refined character, will, strength, and wisdom, but also a man of absolute self-abnegation, respect, responsibility, duty, and service to the national community. Fundamentally, the desire of the third positionist is harmony. Harmony between man and nature, between worker and owner, and between self-respecting peoples of all kinds living their truth.
Yeah, that was incoherent. I don't know why I expected any different. Fascists are inherently incoherent. That basically was a bunch of buzzwords talking about how it's a third way without actually describing how that third way would function. Like, wow. And granted, it was only 6 minutes long, but wow. Just completely failed to describe anything that would actually describe what it is because they couldn't talk about fascism without turning everybody off. Even though they definitely used symbols of fascism, including good old Mussolini right here at the end. So, yeah. Yep. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like, share, and leave a comment because it helps me. Subscribe and ring that bell to help you. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.